I bought my dream house 6 months ago after years of saving. My relationship with Amanda has been close to perfect for the past year and a half. Well, except for one thing, her stepbrother Kyle. Ever since I met him, Kyle seemed to have some unexplainable grudge against me. I tried to be understanding about their complicated family dynamics, but what happened last week crossed every line imaginable. It pushed me to a breaking point I never thought I would reach. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to find out if I was justified in my actions or if I went too far. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Seattle shaped much of who I am today. My parents taught me the value of hard work and persistence lessons that stuck with me through college, where I majored in computer science. After graduation, I landed a job at a growing tech company, and over 8 years I worked my way up to senior software engineer. All those years I lived in modest apartments, saving aggressively for my dream home. When I finally found it 6 months ago, it felt like every sacrifice had been worth it. The house is not enormous, but it sits on a small hill with a partial view of the city skyline and mountains in the distance. It needed some renovation, but I could see its potential the moment I walked through the door. Around the time I started house hunting, I met Amanda at my college friend Derek's birthday party. She was his coworker, a talented graphic designer with bright eyes and an infectious laugh. We started talking about obscure indie bands we both loved, and somehow 3 hours passed in what felt like minutes. Our relationship progressed naturally. Casual dates turned into weekend getaways. I introduced her to my small but close-knit family, who immediately adored her. Meeting her family was more complicated. Amanda came from what she called a modern blended family. Her parents divorced when she was 14. Her mother remarried when Amanda was 18, bringing a stepbrother Kyle into their lives. Kyle was 21 at the time, and had already developed a reputation within their family for being troubled. The first time I met Kyle at a family barbecue, he barely acknowledged my presence. When he did speak to me, his tone was condescending, as if I was somehow beneath him, despite the fact that he had been unemployed for months while I had built a stable career. During that barbecue, I noticed him taking frequent trips to his car, returning slightly more agitated each time. Later, Amanda apologetically explained that Kyle had substance abuse issues he was supposedly working on. I nodded understandingly, but something about him made me uncomfortable. Over the months, we attended more family gatherings where Kyle would make passive-aggressive comments about my job, my car, or even the way I dressed. Once he accidentally spilled red wine on my new white shirt at a Thanksgiving dinner. Another time, he questioned my intentions with Amanda right in front of her mother, implying I was only interested in her for superficial reasons. After each incident, Amanda would pull me aside and apologize, explaining that Kyle had a difficult childhood with his father and never quite adjusted after his parents' divorce. She assured me he was a good person deep down, just struggling to find his way. For Amanda's sake, I tried to maintain a polite relationship with Kyle. I engaged in conversation when necessary and avoided confrontation. Amanda appreciated my efforts, and it seemed like a small price to pay for an otherwise wonderful relationship. 2 months ago, Amanda's lease on her apartment ended, and we decided she would move in with me. It was a big step, but it felt right. We spent a weekend arranging her books on my shelves, finding space for her artwork, and blending our lives together. The house truly began to feel like a home with her in it. Living together was even better than I had anticipated. Amanda respected my space when I needed to work from home, and I enjoyed cooking dinner with her in the evenings. We established comfortable routines and talked about our future together. Everything was perfect until 3 weeks ago when I had to leave for a business trip to San Francisco. The conference in San Francisco was scheduled to last 3 days. Amanda stayed behind to work on a major client project with a tight deadline. We video called each night, and everything seemed fine at home. The last evening of my trip, my final meeting got canceled, giving me the opportunity to catch an earlier flight home. I decided not to tell Amanda so I could surprise her. When my rideshare dropped me off, I immediately noticed something was off. There was an unfamiliar beat-up Honda Civic parked in my driveway next to Amanda's Subaru. I assumed it might belong to one of her friends who had stopped by. As I approached the front door, I realized it was unlocked, which was unusual since we always locked up, especially when one of us was home alone. Inside the house smelled different. There was a lingering scent of cigarette smoke, though neither Amanda nor I smoke. In the living room, I found empty beer bottles and takeout containers scattered across the coffee table. A gaming console I did not recognize was connected to my TV with game cases strewn across the floor. Before I could call out for Amanda, I heard heavy footsteps coming down the hallway. To my shock, it was Kyle wearing only boxers and a t-shirt, looking completely at home as he walked toward the kitchen. He froze when he saw me standing there. "Oh, you are back," he said flatly, without a hint of surprise or embarrassment. Confused and increasingly angry, I asked, "What are you doing in my house?" Before Kyle could answer, Amanda emerged from our bedroom, looking startled to see me. "Jaden, you are home early." I stood there feeling like I had entered some bizarre alternate reality. "Why is Kyle here? And why does it look like he is living here?" Amanda nervously explained that Kyle had been kicked out of his apartment and needed a place to stay just for a few days until he found a new living situation. She claimed she tried to call me about it but could not reach me due to poor reception at my conference. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No text messages asking about Kyle staying over. Despite my rising anger, I tried to remain calm. "How long has he been here?" Amanda hesitated. "Just a couple of days." Kyle snorted, contradicting her claim. "Since like the day after you left, man." My patience was wearing thin, but I still attempted to be reasonable. "Amanda, we should have discussed this first. This is our home." Kyle interrupted, "Dude, chill. It is not like I am taking up much space." Looking around, I realized that was far from true. Kyle had clearly made himself comfortable. His belongings were scattered throughout the common areas. A duffel bag sat open in the corner with clothes spilling out. In the kitchen, I found unfamiliar food items in the refrigerator and pantry. When I checked the guest bedroom, I discovered Kyle had completely moved in. His clothes filled the closet. A laptop and various electronic devices sat on the desk. Empty bags of chips and more beer cans littered the floor. "Amanda, can we talk privately?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. In our bedroom, I expressed how uncomfortable I was with the situation. I reminded her that we had agreed to discuss any guests staying over for extended periods. Amanda became defensive, insisting Kyle had nowhere else to go, and that family should help family. "He is not my family," I pointed out. "And you did not even ask me." "I knew you would say no," she admitted. That statement hit me hard. She had deliberately avoided asking because she knew I would object, yet she did it anyway. Over the next 2 days, the situation deteriorated further. Kyle made no effort to find alternative housing. Instead, he invited friends over without asking, creating noise well into the night while I tried to sleep before work. I discovered he had been using my expensive camera equipment for some project he refused to elaborate on. My home office showed signs of someone using my computer. When confronted, Kyle shrugged it off as no big deal since I was not using it anyway. The worst came when I returned home from work to find my vintage record player broken. It had belonged to my grandfather, one of the few mementos I had from him. The arm was snapped, and several records lay scratched beyond repair. When I demanded an explanation, Kyle simply said, "It is just stuff, man. Chill out. I will buy you a new one." Amanda, instead of acknowledging the sentimental value of what had been damaged, suggested I was overreacting. "It was an accident, Jaden. Kyle feels bad about it." Kyle's expression showed no remorse whatsoever. In fact, he seemed annoyed that I was making an issue of it. That night, Amanda and I had our first major argument. I told her Kyle needed to leave by the weekend. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. We went to bed angry with no resolution. The following morning, I noticed something else amiss. The drawer where I kept my watch collection was partially open. Upon inspection, I realized 3 watches were missing, including a luxury timepiece I had received as a 10th anniversary gift from my company. The discovery of my missing watches was the final straw. I stormed into the guest room where Kyle was still sleeping despite it being almost noon. I flipped on the lights and demanded to know where my watches were. Kyle groggily sat up, looking irritated at being disturbed. "What watches? I do not know what you are talking about. 3 of my watches are missing from my drawer. No one else has been in this house except you, Amanda, and me." Kyle scoffed. "Maybe you misplaced them. Or maybe Amanda moved them while cleaning." I knew better. I always kept my collection meticulously organized. Amanda respected my belongings and would have mentioned if she had moved anything. When I pressed harder, Kyle became aggressive, jumping up from the bed. "Are you accusing me of stealing? You think I am some kind of thief just because I do not have a fancy tech job like you?" I stood my ground. I just want my watches back. They are valuable, especially the Omega. Search my stuff if you want. You will not find anything. Kyle challenged, gesturing around the room. I did just that, looking through his duffel bag and the dresser drawers now filled with his clothes. The watches were nowhere to be found. However, I did discover something equally troubling. A small bag containing pills I did not recognize, tucked inside a sock. What are these? I demanded. Kyle lunged forward, snatching the bag from my hand. That is my personal property. You have no right. I left the room to find Amanda, who was in the kitchen making coffee, seemingly oblivious to the confrontation. My watches are missing, I told her directly. And I just found drugs in Kyle's room. Instead of showing concern, Amanda looked annoyed. You went through his things, Jaden. That is a violation of privacy. It is my house. I reminded her, my voice rising. And 3 expensive watches are gone. Amanda suggested I might have misplaced them, or forgotten where I put them, after showing them to someone. Her dismissive attitude felt like a betrayal. I never take them out of that drawer. Unless I am wearing one, I insisted. And I certainly did not show them to anyone recently. Our argument escalated until Kyle emerged from the guest room glaring at me. Amanda immediately went to his side, as if protecting him from me rather than the other way around. That was when I noticed a key in Kyle's hand, one that looked exactly like my spare house key. Where did you get that? I asked, pointing to the key. Kyle looked at Amanda, who suddenly appeared guilty. I gave it to him, she admitted. He needed to be able to come and go. The revelation that Amanda had given Kyle a key to my house without my knowledge or consent sent me reeling. Not only had she invited him to stay without asking me, but she had also given him unrestricted access to our home. Who else has been in this house when we were not here? I demanded. Kyle shrugged. Just some friends. What friends? How many times? Another shrug. I do not know, man. A few times when I needed company. The thought of strangers having access to my home, my personal belongings, made my skin crawl. I turned to Amanda. Did you know about this? She averted her eyes. I told him he could have friends over as long as they respected our things. I laughed bitterly. Respected our things. My record player is destroyed. My watches are missing. This place was a mess when I returned home early. The argument spiraled out of control. Kyle started shouting that I was a control freak who did not deserve Amanda. I yelled back that he was a parasite taking advantage of his stepsister and disrespecting my home. When I demanded he leave immediately, Kyle got in my face. Make me, he challenged. I was on the verge of doing something I might regret when Amanda stepped between us. What she said next left me speechless. If Kyle goes, I go too, she declared, her expression dead serious. I stepped back, stunned by her ultimatum. After everything that had happened, she was choosing him over me, choosing to protect someone who had violated my trust and likely stolen from me. In that moment, all the anger, frustration, and betrayal I had been holding back erupted. I lost control completely. Then get out. I screamed louder than I had ever yelled before. Both of you get out of my house right now. Amanda flinched as if I had physically struck her. Her eyes filled with tears, her expression a mixture of shock and hurt. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of regret. But then I saw Kyle behind her, a smirk, playing at the corner of his mouth. He had gotten exactly what he wanted all along, to drive a wedge between Amanda and me. Fine, Amanda whispered, her voice breaking. We will go. I stood in silence as they gathered their essential belongings. Kyle took his time, deliberately slow, as if to antagonize me further. As they headed for the door, Kyle glanced back at me. You will regret this, he said quietly, so only I could hear. Nobody talks to my sister like that. After they left, I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained and surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been my peaceful home. In the silence, doubts began to creep in. Had I overreacted? Should I have found a calmer way to handle the situation? But when I looked at my grandfather's broken record player, I knew I had every right to be angry. The question was whether I had gone too far by screaming at Amanda to leave. She had betrayed my trust, but she was also caught in the middle of a difficult situation with her stepbrother. My phone began buzzing with text messages from Amanda's mother and stepfather, accusing me of being heartless and cruel. Apparently, Kyle had already spun his version of events to the family, painting himself as the victim of my unreasonable rage. The day after Amanda and Kyle left, I surveyed my house, truly seeing the extent of the damage and disrespect. Beyond my broken record player and missing watches, I discovered other items missing or damaged. My expensive noise-canceling headphones were nowhere to be found. Several of my rare vinyl records had vanished. The guest bathroom showed signs of rough use with a cracked sink faucet and stained towels. I spent hours cleaning, trying to reclaim my space, but the violation lingered. That afternoon, I called the police to file a report about the stolen items. The officer who took my statement seemed sympathetic but not optimistic about recovering anything without proof. "Do you have any evidence that this Kyle person took your belongings?" she asked. "No concrete evidence," I admitted. "But the timing cannot be a coincidence." The officer suggested I check with neighbors to see if anyone had security cameras that might have captured something useful. As luck would have it, my neighbor across the street, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Russell, had installed a comprehensive security system after a series of break-ins the previous year. When I explained the situation, Mr. Russell invited me in to review his footage. We focused on the days I was in San Francisco. Sure enough, on the second day of my trip, the camera captured Kyle entering my house using a key. Later that same evening, he left with a small bag, returned with 2 other men, and they all entered my house. The following day, Kyle emerged alone, carrying what looked like my watch case, placing it in his car before driving away. Hours later, he returned without it. With this evidence, I returned to the police station. They took the footage and promised to investigate. 3 days later, I received a call. They had located Kyle and found one of my watches at a pawn shop. Under questioning, Kyle eventually confessed to taking all 3 watches and several other items from my home. The officer informed me they were holding Kyle in custody and asked if I wanted to press charges. Without hesitation, I said yes. When Amanda found out, she called me in tears. "I had no idea. He stole from you," she insisted. "I swear, Jaden, I would never have defended him if I knew." "I know," she whispered. "I messed up so badly. Can we talk in person? I want to make this right." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my house. Amanda looked like she had not slept in days. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usual confident posture replaced by a defeated slouch. She apologized profusely, explaining that Kyle had manipulated her with stories about having nowhere to go, claiming his landlord had illegally evicted him. She admitted she should have talked to me first, but was afraid of conflict. "I always try to keep the peace," she said. "My whole life has been about mediating between difficult family members. I thought I could handle Kyle while you were away, but he took advantage of me just like he did you." As sincere as she seemed, I could not ignore the fact that she had betrayed my trust on multiple levels. When she asked if she could move back and promising things would be different, I found myself shaking my head. "I am sorry, Amanda. I care about you, but I cannot go back to how things were. The trust is gone." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I would not trust me either." We parted ways that day with a finality that left me hollow inside. I returned to my empty house and immediately called a locksmith to change all the locks. I spent the weekend installing a security system, reclaiming my space bit by bit. Friends rallied around me once they heard what happened. My buddy Derek came over to help me reorganize and repair what could be fixed. Another friend, Sophia, brought dinner and sat with me as I processed my feelings. "You know it is okay to be angry," Sophia said. "You were violated in your own home. Anyone would have lost it." Her words helped ease some of the guilt I had been carrying about my outburst. Perhaps losing control in that moment had been justified, even necessary. In the following months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I recovered some of my stolen items through the police investigation. Kyle was charged with theft and drug possession, eventually accepting a plea deal that included mandatory rehabilitation. I threw myself into home improvement projects, transforming spaces that held bad memories. I replaced the guest room furniture and repainted the walls. I found a specialist who repaired my grandfather's record player, making it functional again if not perfect. 6 months later, I unexpectedly ran into Amanda at a local farmer's market. She looked healthier, more like her former self. We exchanged awkward greetings, neither sure what to say after all this time. Finally, she broke the silence. "I have been in therapy," she told me, "learning about boundaries and why I always put everyone else's needs above my own. What happened with us with Kyle, it was a wake-up call I needed." I nodded, genuinely glad to hear she was working on herself. "How is your family taking it?" "My mom finally sees Kyle for who he is. He is in a treatment program now, court-ordered. They are not letting him live at home anymore. We parted on civil terms, both acknowledging that some lessons come at great cost." That night, reflecting on everything that had transpired, I realized how much I had grown from the experience. I learned that sometimes you have to lose control to regain control. That setting boundaries is not selfish, but necessary. That standing up for yourself might make you look like the bad guy to some people, but those who truly care will understand. Most importantly, I learned that my home is not just a physical space, but an extension of my boundaries and self-respect. Allowing those boundaries to be violated only invites further disrespect. Today, my house feels like home again. The shadows of betrayal have faded, replaced by new memories with people who respect me and my space. I am dating again cautiously with a clearer understanding of what I will and will not tolerate in a relationship. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently with Amanda, but then I remember the look on Kyle's face as he threatened me in my own home. No, I did exactly what I needed to do. If protecting what is mine makes me the bad guy in someone else's story, so be it. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you loved? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Share this with someone who might be struggling with setting boundaries in their own relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, protecting your peace is never something to apologize for.